Stathopoulos and Josh Phegan come together in an incredible podcast, Grow, Scale, Master.
An energetic approach to drive progress, master skills, build strengths and put the strategy back into rapid business and personal success.
Backed by real-world experience in rapid scaling to playing the long-term game of business, it's the story of all the lessons learned on the journey to mastery.
Be inspired, renew your energy and chase the future with Grow, Scale, Master.
Con, let's talk about success in a distracted age. And we live in a world that's filled with notifications.
Yes.
And we're in a position that all of a sudden there's distractions everywhere. And there's an old school saying that if the goal isn't clear, then literally there'll be plenty of distractions.
Absolutely right.
Do you want your heart surgeon mid-heart surgery having a crack at a Facebook update?
Taking a selfie saying, you know.
And so this is the interesting convo, is it literally is about like what is a distraction and what's really real? And that ability to be able to say that focus is your superpower.
You know what? This is something I struggle with. And it's so funny. As I've gotten older, and maybe it's because of the size of our business now and the moving parts that are with it.
Yeah.
But I tend to find that I have so many distractions. Like I can be in a meeting for half an hour and come out and have, you know, a dozen text messages and calls and emails and whatnot. However, in saying that, I'm being very, very mindful of the power of focus, because what got us to this point was 12 months of dedicated, blinkers on, literally submarine style, go underneath, just do our thing and just pop up, work. And that was the game changer. And that's what I coach my agents. If you can just focus on 2 prospecting call sessions per day for 3 days a week, ideally 5. But if you could just do 2 45-minute sessions per day for 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, not Monday because that's predictable, and not Friday because you're probably having a day off and that's also predictable. The power of focusing on those calls and those conversations are what going to make you from good to great.
So this is interesting. I actually learned the power of focus when I was in year 12.
How? In year 12?
I know.
You were a DJ, weren't you?
I was, yeah. But the interesting conversation was this, is that literally I was not academically that gifted. Like I was not going to be your doctor, bro. If I was your doctor, you should be worried. But the interesting thing is that what I found is that I'd read this book, and the book was called How to Pass Exams.
Yeah.
By a guy by the name of Fred Orr. Like, so that's what I'm buying in the bookshop. So what does that clearly tell you?
Yeah.
I'm worried that I'm not going to even pass the exam. But this wasn't how to pass with flying colours. I bought the book of how to pass.
Gotcha.
And the interesting thing of what he did is he said, okay, great. What you need to do is that literally you got to work in 15-minute blocks, and you literally got to go through, and then you got to write things out, and then literally at the end of that block you got to highlight the key things, and then you have to spend 2 minutes and you have to write down everything that you highlighted.
Oh, okay.
And so what it was about was about repetition and learning, right?
Yeah.
And I'd never learned that before. And he said the other key thing is that when you do your exam, when you write out all of the answers, he said then go through with a highlighter and highlight the best bits. So when the marker's marking the paper, they go, oh, this kid's on.
Wow.
And so literally I'd learnt these techniques.
So that book was called How to Pass
Exams. But so let's fast forward. So when I started my business, and you know, this is 17 years ago in coaching, I was like, okay, great. I've got to get like really dedicated. I've got to get really focused. And mate, I'm going into an environment which I knew nothing about. There was no one to train me how to do it. I'm learning how to do it from scratch. And so I'm trying to create this, and with startup capital of $50. And I'm like, okay, great. What do I do here? And I just learned the power of focus. And so I said, okay, great. So I'm going to set a 45-minute timer. And back then it was like the egg timer. And literally for the next 45 minutes, I'm just going to do this. So I'm not going to do anything else, because the mind would wander to all the things I could do.
Yeah.
But for the next 45 minutes, mate, you are just going to do it. And I had that dream of who are going to be my top 100 customers. And I wrote down 100 names of people that I would then go and chase.
Yeah, right.
And so literally, and I know it sounds really funny, but it's a bit bizarre. But
I was on the list, wasn't I?
No, you weren't.
Oh, shit.
I couldn't spell your surname. But the basic idea is that actually I'd read this story about Pixar and Toy Story. And when they were producing Toy Story, what they did is they realized that they had a certain amount of editing time available until the movie had to go live. And they'd worked out that they were over-editing, and they weren't going to get to the second half of the film. So what they actually did is they got paddle pop sticks, and each paddle pop stick like represented an edit session. And this was the total number of edit sessions they had left versus the number of scenes that they had to build. And that's how they worked it out. And so I remember I would write down people's names and I'd put them on a paddle pop stick on the left side of the desk. And in order to move them to the right side of the desk,
was it
you had to make a sale.
Okay, right.
Had to make a sale,
right,
not a connect.
Sale, right.
A proper sale. Like someone had to buy your services. And my dad walked into the office one day and he's like, what are you doing? I said, I'm trying to move the paddle pop sticks from this side of the table to the other side of the table. And he's like, where are you? And I'm like, I said, but every time I do it, it's $500. He's like, okay. But what I was learning was about the power of a hit list. And what I was learning, through my creativity at the time was literally the ability to be able to go and focus. And I would say to my team that, what I can get done in 15 minutes is pretty phenomenal if I've got uninterrupted 15 minutes time.
How do you find 15 minutes of uninterrupted time today? So is that like notifications off? Because you wear an Apple Watch and I wear one from time to time.
Sure.
Have you turned everything off?
All notifications are off except for email. All notifications are off except for Maps, SMS, and calendar.
Okay.
So because they're kind of critical that you need the alert turn left.
Is that on your phone and your watch?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Now, the interesting conversation around it is that when I work inside the 45-minute sessions, what does it actually look like? So we're living in a world where we're becoming very reactive to, what's in my email inbox or what's in my SMS, my WhatsApp that I need to respond to as opposed to what am I doing to really get ahead. So if you and I said to you, okay, great, and think about the power of focus. If you think about what would I need to do to go to make that happen, you can make incredible goals happen.
Correct.
Now, we had a situation where a very close friend of mine had lost their father to cancer. And I didn't know how to respond. It was the first time that had ever happened to me. So I thought, okay, great, I want to try and raise some money for the Cancer Council. So Drew McTavish, who you know, was already doing Tough Mudder, and we jumped in on that. And then literally in the course of 3 weeks, we went and did it. We raised $25,000. And the next year we went and did it. We raised $50,000. And you know what? It was the power of focus because literally, okay, great. The next 45 minutes, who are some people I can call right now that I could get to be a part of this cause and could help us to go and do it?
Yeah, wow.
So what I want you to think about is that when there's a really crystal clear goal, you will find a way to absolutely go and hammer it out.
I completely agree with that.
So now what I'm saying, okay, great. If you understand the methodology, if you took a piece of paper at the start of each day and you said, okay, what one thing that if you did today would significantly change the momentum in your life?
Yep.
So I sell Smith Street, or I get a listing, or I get some buyers through Jones Street.
I get a price reduction on Jones Street.
Yeah. Or I train my EA how to do that, or my buyer's associate on how to do a sales meeting, whatever. Like that stuff is so critically important. And so when you're thinking about that, the goal has got to be crystal clear. So I just say to you, okay, great, what do you actually want? And I think that what's been very powerful in your business is that, when we get to this time of the year, go, how many more listings do you want? How many more sales do you want this year? And how many listings do you want to start next year?
Correct.
And then once you've done all of that, there's a big word underneath it, holiday.
That's absolutely right.
But you've got to get those 3 things done.
Yeah.
And so this is the issue because when I'm thinking about that, when you're in this world, your ability to disconnect. The best ideas come when I'm going for a run, when I'm going for a walk, when I'm not at the tool, if that makes sense. So I'm not having to make the calls.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ring that person and do that connect and I'll touch that conversation. And this is interesting. Like what you've got to do is you've got to get very clear, what does success actually look like for you? And how will you know when you've achieved it? So I don't necessarily look at the numbers in my business, which is scary. But what I look at is to see are all of my available appointments sold?
Yeah.
And if all the available appointments
then the
are
numbers
sold,
take care of themselves.
Then everything's okay. So what I'm going to get you to think about is that give me a forward indicator. So that might be, as a business owner, number of opens, number of auctions ahead in the business, number of opens that are less than 28 days on market, number of new campaigns launching. Like, you talk a lot about that, about X $1 million worth of stock that we've got available to sell in the course of the next 30 days.
That's right.
And so that's your forward indicator, but literally that's the goal. And so this is a really important thing is that when you think about success in a distracted age, I'm saying I want quality time, but I want quality relationships. So when I'm thinking about quality time, how to actually make sure that I can just spend the time the way I want to in what's available and have quality relationships that really matter and not takers, but people that actually are really wanting to give. Isn't that
kind of like your definition of what success looks like anyway?
Yes.
The ability to have quality time, the ability to disconnect, the ability to have great quality relationships with people.
Yeah.
So then that way you're not living in this cluttered, distracted, always notified world.
A chaotic world.
You're correct.
And so and I've met people who say, Josh, I've limited it that I'll only go out 2 nights a week.
Right.
So if it's a business function and a personal function.
It's actually interesting you say that because I've limited no more business functions this year. So from my perspective, I think I've got 2 more commitments, but I've just said that's enough because I've got literally 10 weeks to Christmas and I need to make sure that I maximise that for myself and also for the people that I'm responsible for in our organisation to be able to have the best lead up to the best break that they can have.
And just think there's small changes here which can really provide big impacts, like have a look at your average sale price, get that up. get the volume of transactions up. If you're doing 20, go to 30. Get your fee up. And it's simple things, right?
It's so interesting because when we did our FY25 business plan, right, it's called 25 and 25, and we've got 3 key metrics around the number 25. But what was really interesting was, one of those was recruitment. Let's recruit 25 sales agents / associates into the business. And we kind of did the forward math on that. And then we just looked at one metric, actually it was 2, but one key metric was if we could increase our fee by 0.12 of a percent, we would put another $3.25 million in GCI into the business. One thing. Which was so minuscule. The second one, just out of curiosity, was if we could make sure that the non-preventable churn, so that is landlords that are selling or moving back in, particularly the ones that are selling, could we increase the conversion of how many of those we got to resell, right? And that was another 1.25. So between those two metrics, it's $4.5 million. That's essentially recruiting 10 agents that write $450,000.
And I think the secret is that literally none of that is like out of this world.
It's not.
But I tell you what, would you like fries with that?
Yeah.
Made them $1 billion.
Hey, Delta Airways removing that one olive from every salad saved them $1 million. You know what I mean?
Had olives on planes. but I kind of love this, planning for what's ahead, 2025, outside of all the Super Saturday stuff. We're not going there today, but what I do know for people is that literally in April, you're going to have a late Easter.
Yes.
And that's going to be Good Friday, Easter Monday, Anzac Day, my birthday, all in 2 weeks.
Correct.
And then
you've got
a federal election that has to be called by the end of May.
That's right.
So I'm saying to people right now, January, February, March needs to be a rapid quarter.
Yep.
Because I'm saying that April, May, June is going to be a cluster.
But what a lead up that we've got, right? So there's plenty of stock on the market in our markets here in Sydney. But think about being able to clear that stock, reload for the new year. You've probably got an interest rate cut coming either next month or February, right? And then you're leading into that second quarter or the third quarter of the financial year where it is going to be a bit of a traffic jam. If you've got those runs on the board and that forward momentum, you can absolutely take off through that period. And that's when you take market share, right? And that's such a critical time. So you're right, you have to understand of what's ahead, reading the play.
Experiences that rapidly shaped you.
Con, I'm not sure why, but one day I decided that I just was going to go. And I went to the Kangaroo Island Health Retreat.
You talk about this all the time. You love it, don't you?
Sue McCarthy has been one of the great
She's still
oracles
around?
of the world. She is.
Great.
And Sue says something pretty interesting. She says, the mind is the master, the body is the vehicle, knowledge is the power, but practice is the key.
Oh.
So when you think about the mind is the master, the body won't go where the mind won't take it.
Yes.
If knowledge is the power, okay, great, I know it, but do you put it into practice?
Yes.
To do it.
Yeah.
Like we all know we're supposed to eat well. We all know we're supposed to have functional relationships. We all know we're supposed to put money away for savings.
Yes.
But do you do it?
Yeah.
And so I think that that's a really foundational idea to change the way that you think.
Yeah, well, one thing that I've been doing more frequently, and you're often at my home, is actually instead of going out to a restaurant, actually having dinner at home, which is so foreign because you actually have to cook and prepare, and I do that for a couple of reasons. The first one is it's my inner sanctum. The second one is it's the most relaxed where people can be. You don't have to get dressed up. I mean, if you look at me now, I'm in my Ugg boots, and right. So I'm finding that the reverse of what we used to do, that those good old family traditions where you'd have people over, that's what I'm craving at the moment. And I'm finding that our relationships, with Emily, my wife, and my children, and the close people in our network, they're the ones that are getting more enriched because we're actually, going back to basics.
Something that's changing your view.
So, Con, I have been doing a lot of work in understanding what's happening in the AI world, right? And one of the things is that, technology overstates almost rudely and abruptly its capacity. We're going to shape the world. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But it eventually catches up to its promise. But it takes time. Literally, it's like you only now you're starting to work out how bad Siri is until the new Siri comes out, right?
Yes.
And so that's kind of interesting. But you get out what you put in if you stay core to the true principles that remain.
Right.
So, in other words, technology was going to tell you who's next. Who's the next buyer? Who's the next seller? Who's going to do this? Intent data, what's happening in the digital world.
Yes.
But mate, if they're not doing anything,
that doesn't matter.
Good luck.
Exactly.
And so I got to go and find Con, who's got a bit of cash out the back, who's prepared to go and buy another investment property.
Yes.
Because he can.
Yes.
And ring him because he's not necessarily clicking it in the digital environment.
Correct.
And so what I'm saying to people is that, like, literally, particularly when you've got changes that are actually happening with prices and a volatile economy, you've got to get back to relationships. And here's the key thing, the relationships you never should have left. So the ability to be able to pick up the phone, ring someone, have a great convo is the difference of what makes businesses move.